Good afternoon. The first item of business is a debate on motion number 374 in the name of Angela Constance on dignity, fairness and respect in disability benefits. And I invite members who wish to speak in the debate to press their request to speak buttons now. And it gives me great pleasure to call on Jeane Tompkins to give her opening... Sorry, Jeane Freeman. I'm marrying you off to the Conservative opposition spokesperson. It gives me great pleasure to call on the Minister to give her opening debate speech in this Parliament. Ms Freeman.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, if not for the marriage you just entered me into. Presiding Officer, I'm delighted to be here today, opening a debate for the first time as Scotland's first Social Security Minister. I know this chamber has already debated and discussed these new powers, and I look forward to working with parliamentarians in the chamber and in the new committee. Our shared task is to lay the foundations of a social security system we can all be proud of. Given that this is also my first speech in the chamber, I hope you'll permit me to make two brief points. The first is, of course, to thank the voters of Carrick, Cumnock and Doon Valley, where I was born and raised, for the trust they have placed in me. And the second is to pay rightful and due tribute to both Adam Ingram, who served the constituency, the south of Scotland, and this Parliament so well in the past 17 years, and to Margaret Burgess, in her role in particular in setting up the first social security powers of this Parliament. Their example of putting people first, of hard work, and of total commitment to doing the best possible job is one I very much hope to emulate. I'm particularly pleased to have the opportunity to open this debate during Carers Week. This morning I visited Voices of Carers across Lothian, hearing firsthand about the important work that organisation does, and importantly, hearing direct from carers themselves about the challenges they face. I was able to let them know of this government's absolute commitment to make the best use we can of the new powers to recognise the contributions carers make to the quality of life of us all. These new powers, Presiding Officer, present us with an enormous opportunity. An opportunity to take a different path to the UK Government and to harness the powers to our values so we support people and tackle inequalities, building a fairer society. In 2012, the UK Government introduced its Welfare Reform Act. Julia Unwin, Chief Executive of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, speaking about it a year later, said it is a system that is loathed by those who depend upon it, criticised by those who understand it, and with a public media discourse that demonises poor people and equates poverty with wickedness or hopelessness. Like many in this chamber, I have heard from disabled people worried and distressed by the cuts being imposed and by the way they are treated by the Tory welfare system. I have heard how the system that is supposed to help and support them is actually doing them harm. Delays and backlogs, lengthy, disjointed and complicated forms and process, inconsistency in assessment decisions. And driving all of that, calculated, planned UK Government cuts to our lifeline support needed by so many of our most vulnerable citizens. Cuts in the name of austerity to provide a so-called fix for an economic crisis they did not create, but for which they are now paying a terrible price. UK Government welfare spend is forecast to fall by 1.5% of GDP between 2015-16 and 2020-21, reaching at that point the lowest percentage level in 30 years. Systematic spending cuts at a UK level to housing benefit, incapacity benefit, employment state pensions, employment support allowance and the introduction of a benefit cap. With 85% of benefits remaining at Westminster, we do not have the powers to address all of this unfairness. But we can and we will do better with the new powers that we will have. With a fairer, more transparent approach to social security, we intend to rebuild the trust that has been eroded and build in equality, fairness and respect. Social security is an investment to support people, an investment in people and communities, there for any one of us when we need it and without blame or stigma. This government has already achieved a great deal with the powers we currently have. We have protected and invested in the Independent Living Fund, and in the self-directed support strategy and the legislation that underpins it, we have shown our commitment to enabling individuals, carers and their families to have flexibility, choice and control over the support services they receive. We have fully mitigated the effects of the bedroom tax, providing over £35 million in discretionary housing payments, protecting 72,000 households, 80% of which have a disabled adult, from the terrible anxiety that comes when you're told you need to pay more for your home because you simply have one bedroom too many. But with more than 500,000 people in Scotland receiving carer and disability benefits, our new powers give us the opportunity to do more. Presiding Officer, I now want to outline to the Chamber the steps we are taking to build a fairer and more transparent approach to disability benefits, making real the principles of dignity and respect. We have already committed to maintaining the level of disability benefits and making sure they will not be mean tested. We have heard many times that the assessment process is not working. Just last year, this Parliament was told of some harrowing experiences of disabled people through the work of the Welfare Reform Committee. And I'd like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to that committee and its work and the invaluable evidence and insight they provided. We were told of a process unable or unwilling to understand and take account of fluctuating health conditions, when a person can have good days and bad days. A process in a system that, as one woman who some days can't walk or brush her teeth has said, makes her feel like a nuisance and a fraud. How utterly appalling to live with a Tory system that makes someone feel like that. So we will reform the assessment procedures to ensure they work for people claiming disability benefits. The process of applying for and receiving benefits should be easy for everyone to understand, and people should be supported through the process. We will set clear timeframes for assessments, for decisions and appeals. We will ensure information is accessible for those who need it. If someone has an existing long-term condition that is unlikely to change, they should not be repeatedly reassessed. So we will stop the revolving door of assessments for those with long-term illnesses, disabilities or conditions and introduce longer-term awards, awards based on individual circumstances and needs. And to provide more certainty and reduce stress to thousands of families whilst the transfer of benefits takes place, any child in receipt of disability living allowance will continue to receive that award to the age of 18 if they so wish. And we will do more. We will build into our system a consistent approach that treats every single person with compassion, with dignity, with fairness and with respect, and nothing less will be tolerated. Presiding Officer, research by Contact a Family has shown that higher heating and utility bills are the top extra costs for families with disabled children. In 2014, an estimated 34% of families with disabled children were going without heating. It is simply unacceptable that a parent is forced into making a choice about whether or not to heat their home. So that is why we will extend eligibility for winter fuel payment to families with children in receipt of the highest care component of the Disability Living Allowance. Presiding Officer, I mentioned earlier the immense contribution made by Scotland's 745,000 unpaid adult carers and 44,000 young carers. Carers are motivated by love and compassion, and for many, caring is a rewarding and positive experience. But that doesn't mean it can't also have a negative impact on a carer's physical and mental well-being and their financial security. Some carers are forced into difficult choices between work and caring, between studying and caring. Others take lower paid or less skilled jobs to fit in with their caring duties. And there are fewer opportunities for carers to do the simple things that we take for granted: meeting friends, going to the cinema, time just for you. So, Presiding Officer, that is why it is crucial that we support carers to have a life alongside caring. It is unfair that support in the form of the carers allowance is the lowest of all working age benefits. So we have committed to increasing it to the level of the job seekers allowance, an additional £600 a year, an approximate 18% increase. And we have won the argument with the UK Government to make sure that any carer who is in receipt of another low-income benefit, like income support, will remain entitled to that benefit as well. On May 25th, the First Minister announced in her speech on priorities for this government that we will ask our carer advisory groups for their views on how we might make progress on a young carers allowance to provide extra support for young people with significant caring responsibilities. This suggestion came from the Green Party, and I'm delighted that we can show in practice our commitment as a government to listen and act on good ideas wherever they come from.